Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video. It's another team selection for our FPL teams this week coming up. It was a bad week last week. Let's hope for everyone's sake this week has a few more points. Let's get straight into our team.
Okay, so going into my team then. So last week we managed to get a decent green arrow due to the United boys, Onana and Bruno Fernandes, getting me a combined 17 points, which was really good because basically no one owns them by now. So I've actually managed to pull off some points with those boys, which was nice. We're into the top 100k at the minute, which is decent for this stage of the season. So hoping to improve on that going forward. This is going to be the last week potentially before I wildcard over the international break. But as you can see, there are a few issues in the team that we'll go on to discuss. Onana in goal, Luton at home. I think that's a decent fixture. Well, it's probably one of the better fixtures you can choose for a defensive team at the moment. I think Onana's improved massively in terms of his keeping skills. It's just the defence ahead of him. Still so many injuries. Johnny Evans went off injured on Wednesday night for United, which I think is quite a big miss because Ten Hag does like playing with a left-footed centre-back and a right-footed centre-back. That's why we've seen Evans over Varane in recent weeks. So it'll be interesting to see who even plays in that defence going into that game. Into defence, John Stones, I brought him in last week as, well, a 2-week punt, basically, in this defensive slot. Obviously, he picked up an injury in the Champions League in midweek, which is crucial as to why you don't make transfers early during the FPL season. So he's ruled out for a couple of months, I do believe. So he'll be potentially one of the guys I'll be getting rid of at the moment. Obviously, I've got Simicast in there as well. He didn't start against Luton, and he has started tonight against Toulouse. And I think he had an error leading to the goal. So it's not looking good for him either. And then there's Matty Cash, who finishes the team. He is fit and available. So he had a bit of an injury worry in the last game, came off a little bit early. But he should be available for Fulham at home. So two defensive... I'd say Simicast is a bit of an orange flag. I don't think he'll start necessarily against Brentford. It's a difficult one to predict, but I only have the one free transfer. What's your thoughts on that defence at the moment, Ben?
Yeah, it was probably looking all so good until this weekend. To be honest, with Stones getting injured midweek, it's tough. And Simicast obviously started the game, got taken off for tactical reasons at halftime midweek, and had an error leading to a goal. Like it's not ideal at all. Like I'm gonna sort of stick my neck out and say I don't think he starts this week. I just got that feeling. Yes, Gomez played full 90 against Toulouse, but you know he didn't play well at all. And a lot of people saying, look, it was his spot to lose, and he's potentially on the verge of losing this spot. I hope I'm wrong because I've got Simicast as well and I'm in the same position. So let's see how it plays out. I think you're going to have to see how it plays out with Simicast and sort of hold off bringing them out just this week because obviously there's more pressing issues in terms of a guaranteed out in terms of John Stones. But yeah, Cash and Onana, don't see any issues with that. But it's the Simicast one. And even a clean sheet's not guaranteed with Liverpool against a Brentford team that are pretty decent in terms of their attacking output.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one. Obviously, I'll show my bench as well in a moment with the defenders that I have available there. Onto the midfield, then we've got Bruno Fernandes, Luton at home. I think it's a good fixture. I think he's been almost United's saving grace in the last couple of weeks. You know, scored that last-minute winner against Fulham. I thought against Copenhagen in midweek, he looks really sharp as well. If he scored a penalty there. So he's a good option for this week, I think, if you still have him. Diaby with Fulham at home, I think he is equally just a good option. Obviously, Ollie Watkins is blanked in the last 2 game weeks. Diaby's returned 2 weeks ago, obviously blanked last week. Really shocked that Villa lost 2-0 to Forest, to be fair. I thought that would have been another... Well, it's been rare that Villa haven't scored this season. So that was interesting to see. Fulham at home, though, I think they will score there. They're very good at Villa Park. Anthony Gordon, Bournemouth away. There's potential that he could even be playing as the 9. Some have said, obviously, Callum Wilson's picked up an injury. There's no Alexander Isak, so potentially he could play that false 9 position. He did it against Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. But whether that makes him a better asset or not, I'm not so sure. Bournemouth away, though, is a really nice fixture for Newcastle. One of the best attacking teams in the league at the moment. And we obviously have Salah at home to Brentford. Again, not the easiest of fixtures, as Ben alluded to, but he won't be coming out for it, that's for sure. And then obviously Heung-min Son, Wolves away. Spurs, what sort of team can they put together come the lunchtime kickoff? It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, there's been no updates at the time of recording, as we're recording on Thursday night. Obviously, Ange Postecoglou's press conference will be tomorrow. Hopefully, we get some updates on quite a few players, to be fair. Obviously, Mickey van der Ven went off injured. Early reports is that it's not as bad as they first feared. And then, obviously, James Maddison as well. But I know, Ben, you mentioned earlier in our Telegram that he's been called up to the England team. So that suggests it's not too long-term. What's your thoughts on that Spurs and my midfield?
Yeah, there's two different ways that you can look at this. You can look at it in the fact that Spurs have lost a lot of defenders. They're going to lose attacking output as a result of the sort of loss of structure and stability in the team. But you can look at it the other way. A loss of structure and stability doesn't matter with Ange's team. He's still going to attack and they're still going to have the same attacking output. And it might just be end to end and be a load of goals. So it could increase Son's potential. But yeah, like I said, the midfield is looking decent for you this week. Obviously, Gordon has the potential to be starting it up front in that Newcastle team. Don't think he'll be taking penalties though, off sort of Fabian Schär or Trippier. I think one of those two will get penalties with Isak and Wilson potentially out. And then, yeah, like I said, Diaby, Bruno, Salah, nice fixtures for all of them. So it's a pretty decent midfield setup for this week.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, with that Ange comment, like just literally, even with 9 men against Chelsea last week, playing the highest line I think I've ever seen, like it was absolutely mental. So I'll be looking forward to more of that to come as a Son owner. And then up top, obviously, these two boys that I've had for quite a while now, Alvarez and Haaland. Haaland started against Young Boys, scored a brace. Alvarez rested for a full 90, which is music to my ears as an owner. I feel like he's sort of slowed down in his returns in the last couple of weeks just for the sheer amount of minutes that he's had to play so far this season. So, yeah, nice for him to get a little rest for that Chelsea away fixture. I really think that City could run riot against them. And I'm a little bit sad that John Stones is injured because I feel that they could easily keep a clean sheet in there. It's a bit weird saying that after Chelsea just scored 4 goals, but they looked absolutely terrible in front of goal. What's your thoughts on Alvarez and Haaland, Ben? Would you think that's a decent partnership for this week? I know Chelsea's a difficult fixture on paper, but they don't look too good, do they?
On paper, agreed. But the defensive structure and stability look not too bad. Like Pochettino's building something there, but it's just whether this fixture comes too soon. And I'm really torn as well on the Haaland captaincy this week because I agree with you. I think City could run right in this fixture, but we've seen before when City run right doesn't necessarily mean Alvarez and Haaland goals as we saw last week. Probably a bit of an anomaly, but it does happen. I think City will score. I think one of Alvarez or Haaland will score as a sort of safe bet. But again, like there's a load of different captaincy options you can go for. You could argue a case for sort of an Arsenal player with a really nice fixture against Sheffield United. You can argue even like Salah, Son. Like there's a load of different options that we can go for this week. I think Haaland's the safest one to go for in terms of sort of your security of minutes, in my opinion. Despite the injury last weekend, I do think he's secure in his minutes, especially Chelsea away, traditionally not an easy fixture for Manchester City. So, yeah, Haaland captaincy, I don't mind it at all. And a double up and nearly a triple up, I wouldn't have minded either.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating that, but yeah, I think for me, I'll be keeping the armband on Haaland this week just because I'm just not fancying the other teams. I think there's more risk in the other teams. For example, Son with Spurs, although we obviously said there could be good positives to that team, not having quite a few injuries. We're obviously not sure how that's going to pan out. I think Brentford's a really tough game for Liverpool as well. You know, Brentford's set up in a way that really frustrates teams. We've seen it so far this season, especially at Stamford Bridge, for example. I know Chelsea are not playing as well as Liverpool at the moment, but for me, yeah, Brentford's a really tough one. Into the bench now, Areola, Nottingham Forest at home. If you've got him, I don't think that's necessarily an awful fixture, but West Ham have been conceding so many goals at the moment. Obviously, it started the season really bright, but I think in their last 6 games, they've only won 1, and that was against Sheffield United. So, yeah, not doing as good at the moment, West Ham. Obviously, I've got Kabore there. Obviously, United away potentially isn't a bad fixture at the moment. You know, United are really struggling to score goals. I know they scored 3 against Copenhagen, but Copenhagen defended really poorly. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see there how United play. But United away, he could actually feature for me this week if Tsimikas doesn't start. So we'll have to wait on that one. And then obviously Mubama, not played a single minute yet so far this season for West Ham. And then Adoji is suspended for this game week, which is annoying because he's got Wolves away, which isn't a bad fixture. And in an ideal world, I would just transfer out Stones, start Adoji. Life would be good, but unfortunately not. So that's the bench. What would you do in my situation, Ben? Would you focus on the Stones move and try and move to a... I've had an Arsenal defender like Saliba as my number one option, but would you do anything different?
I don't think so. No, I think Saliba is probably the safest option, even for a 1 week punt. You're going to need, and you're going to probably have FOMO of Arsenal assets this week. Yeah. So I'd maybe look at doing that move. Definitely, there's a potential that you could look at Nketiah if he's fit, but again, that's a risk in terms of transfer. It's probably not worth looking at right this instant. I think like just rolling with one Arsenal player, maybe taking the hit that you're going to lose out on points this week for the Arsenal assets, and then sort of reset and go again with a wild card from next week onwards. Tsimikas, I think, is a typical thing that FPL managers do during midweek when they don't perform well, they get taken off rightly, and it automatically means that they don't play during the week. Tsimikas has been good for a while as a backup for Liverpool at left back. I don't anticipate that changing off the back of a poor performance away from Toulouse. I don't think anyone really played too well for Liverpool in that fixture. So I'm going to back him to start. There's obviously going to be a risk associated with Tsimikas. We've seen that. If he's benched, he'll come off the bench and he'll get the 1 point. So you're probably not looking at Kabore coming off for you anyway. But if he does start on set pieces, on corners, there's an attacking threat there as well. So, yeah, I'd maybe focus on the Stones transfer for now. Tsimikas, let's just wait and see with that one. Okay, so moving on into my team. And as you can see, I've gone a little bit different than Josh. Obviously, a wildcarded a couple of weeks ago. So my team does have some differences in there. And maybe some players that Josh might be looking to pick up in the next week or so. Areola in net, Nottingham Forest at home, West Ham. Like, they've been a little bit inconsistent over the last couple of weeks in terms of the defense. Over the whole season, it's not been too bad for them. And for value for money, Areola's up there with all the keepers for this season. Matty Cash, pretty happy to start him this week for at home. I know some managers were looking at potentially selling for Arsenal assets. I just don't see a reason to this week. Tsimikas, again, we sort of touched on him already. And I've got Gay from Crystal Palace. And I think, Palace a pretty decent sort of chance of getting a clean sheet this week. And then Gabriel, who I'm hoping also plays this week rather than getting benched like he did in the last easy fixture. That's the back five, Josh. I'm pretty confident on that, barring Tsimikas. I'm interested in your thoughts. I think you probably sort of think along the same sort of lines with the Tsimikas shout.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think he could feature, like he will come off the bench probably. So that's what makes it annoying. So for me, in my situation, I've not really got a way out because obviously Stones is injured too. For you though, obviously I think you have 2 free transfers after your wild card, so he could be potentially someone that you look at getting rid of. Yeah. I think there's quite a few options to go to after game week 12 in terms of defensive assets. Some few outside the box ones, big differentials to look at. So maybe you could look forwards rather than at the right now with a defensive transfer there. The rest of it though looks really good. Gahey, really good option. I was going to bring in Mitchell instead of Stones last week, which is really frustrating. It was a 50-50 between them two. I'm 9 points worse off, and now a transfer has to be used to get Stones out, which is frustrating. But yeah, I think Palace defense is probably one of the best ones to target right now, alongside the Arsenal one as well. Like you said, with Gabriel. But that's why I'm just going to go to Saliba because he just doesn't get rotated. I think for the extra, I think it's 0.5 million now. I think it's just worth it just because you don't get that headache that you get with Gabriel, and there's no one else in that defense cheaper that isn't rotation risk like Zinchenko and Tomiyasu. Even in midweek, they played a half each. So yeah, it's not looking ideal. I think if you're wildcarding going forwards, I think David Raya is a decent option in goal. Alongside an Areola, and then you've cheapen out on the Arsenal defense, but then you've got the consistency of minutes there as well.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and as you can see, I'm playing a 4-4-2 this week. That's the plan anyway. We've got Heung-min Son, Wolves away, and like I alluded to with Josh's team, I think there's potential that the threat of him could increase if Spurs' games get a little bit more chaotic. Mitoma against Sheffield United at home. It's probably an almost last chance saloon from Mitoma. I've had him in for quite a while now, and he just hasn't delivered as much as I thought he would, and as I thought Brighton would. I think, European commitments has affected them quite a bit in terms of an attacking output. They haven't looked as good in recent weeks. I've currently got Salah on captaincy at the moment. It's up in the air for me this week. I'm a little bit torn between him, Saka, and Haaland. I'm probably going to make a pretty late decision on who I captain with that. Saka, the reason why he's on the vice at the moment is, again, that little injury that he potentially picked up in midweek. We'll find out a little bit more, hopefully, tomorrow if Arteta allows it. But we know what he's like in press conferences. So that's midfield, Josh. Only the 4 in there with one of my players on the bench. You'll be able to see the full team structure and why I've benched, who I've benched later on. But what are your initial thoughts on that midfield?
Yeah, overall it's really good. 4 pretty decent fixtures for all 4 assets. I think Mitoma, like you say, he hasn't necessarily had those hauls, but I don't think he's necessarily done too bad. I think he picked up an assist last week. I was looking at Evan Ferguson potentially before I had those injuries at the back as a sort of a 1-week punt this week against that Sheffield United side. I think, having a Brighton attacker or any sort of Brighton assets for this game could be a nice differential. Obviously, just be wary of the rotation there. Obviously, they did just play Ajax on Thursday night, so there will be some of that. Salah captaincy is interesting. I think, like you say, there isn't much in between all the assets this week for captaincy. Saka, for me, is probably a little bit of a risk more than the others just because of that injury. It seems like he's literally like every other week at the moment. He's just still got this ankle injury that he's sort of almost playing with. For me, I'd probably hold off on the Saka one, although the fixture there is probably the best at the moment because Burnley look absolutely awful.
Okay, then up top and on the bench, we've got Erling Haaland up top, and I am really tempted to captain him. I am, and despite me being on Salah captaincy at the moment, I do think that he can run riot against Chelsea, despite Chelsea's sort of underlying decent sort of stats that they produce defensively. And it's going to be a last minute decision for me on captaincy anyway. And I think a lot of managers are going to be pretty torn on captaincy this week because there's a lot of different factors affecting this. Haaland is Haaland at the end of the day. Watkins as well. I'm fairly confident on him. His underlying stats, despite a couple of blanks in his last 2. I'm confident. Fulham at home. Fulham aren't very good defensively away from home anyway. So I back Watkins and I back Diaby and I back Cash as well to put forward some decent attacking numbers. On the bench, we've currently got Branthwaite, Palmer, and Mubama. Branthwaite would probably move second on the bench as he is now. I doubt Palmer up into first sub. Now, the decision is obviously 2 free transfers, 0.1 in the bank. It's potentially looking at the team and probably saying, Tsimikas maybe out, but who do you get in at that price point? I've sort of got all of the players that are a FPL potential asset. So do I move him down and move someone up? It's a difficult decision to make. Josh, what are your initial thoughts on that? With 2 free transfers, with this team looking so much like what a potential decent wild card would for this week, what are your thoughts? What would the strategy be in this situation?
Yeah, it is a difficult one. Obviously, for me, I think I would focus on that Tsimikas move. Like I alluded to earlier, maybe looking at forward thinking. Maybe it's a poor fixture this week, but you've got the potential to play Palmer there. I think Palmer's been really good for Chelsea since he's come in. Obviously, you got the penalties as well. You never know what could happen. City tend to concede a goal almost every game. So that could be a shout. I think there's someone who I was looking at on my potential like wildcard drafts was like Timothy Castagna from Fulham. Their run of fixtures is pretty good. Defensively, they've been improving after the start of the season. At the start of the season, it was terrible, but yeah, someone like that, maybe, I don't know. You have to have a look at like maybe fixture tickers going forward. But for this week and next week especially, it's really hard to find a defender that has a good fixture for both because game week 13 is just such a weird game week where literally all the good teams face each other. So it's going to be a difficult one. It'll be interesting to see what you do, though. So that wraps up our game week 12 team selection video. That is the last team selection before yet another international break. This is the last one, though, before Christmas, which is ideal. Let us know what you think you're going to do in the comments, who you're going to be captaining. It's a bit of a difficult one this week, a few problems lying around. So, yeah, stay tuned to all the other socials to see our locked-in teams.
And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.